Lord of the Midgets asks if MGTOW can survive in a war zone and proposed the following, quote, MGTOW is a luxury which we can only afford in a society so secure that we can discard the best and the brightest while still being safe. With the refugee crisis flooding Europe and with Islamic culture and very likely multiple terrorist cells, can we afford MGTOW, or do we need to look at a bigger picture, protect our cultural climate so we can return to MGTOW again in the future? Should the MGTOW community become less libertarian and more nationalist in order to protect their own freedom? At what point does going your own way become self-destructive? Close quote. These are fair questions. Yes, I think MGTOW can survive in a war zone, and I disagree with the proposition that going your own way would, under the current circumstances, be self-destructive. As many of you know, I am political, but I don't subscribe to the view that everybody has to be political. It's a personal decision, and I respect each of you to decide for yourself. If I understand correctly, what Lord of the Midgets is asking is if we have reached a tipping point where it would be self-destructive to not be politically active. Well, let me start by explaining why I'm active. First, while I'm preparing to obtain second citizenship in Chile, or possibly Colombia, I'm not keen to learn Spanish. My ancestry includes French families who immigrated to Canada in the 1600s, and my physiology is more suited to learning French than Spanish. Second, while the Chilean culture, political and economic climate, and geography is very appealing to me, they're subject to frequent droughts and destructive earthquakes, which make me apprehensive. Of course, I live in the right in the Cascade subduction zone, and one of these days we're going to get a 9 or a 10 here, so maybe it would be safer to move to Chile. Third, while the country of Argentina has much to offer, the political climate there is terrible. As Doug Casey puts it, the government in Argentina is certifiably insane. So I'd prefer to remain where I am. My American Indian roots, right where I live right now, run deep, more than 1,000 years. But the People's Republic of Seattle poisons everything with their socialist policies and are rapidly eroding our freedoms here. Plus, America's education system is terrible. It's doing horrible things to our youth. So, while I'm preparing myself to learn Spanish and begin exploring Chile and Argentina with Colombia as a possible third choice, I'm supporting the liberty movement within the Republican Party as a last-ditch effort to stop the crony capitalists who have taken over both major parties. Martin Armstrong of Armstrong Economics says his computer models show a sovereign debt crisis spreading around the world that will come to the United States between 2017 and 2019. This will drive money out of the public sector and into the private sector. At the same time, there are huge technological innovations that will fuel the next global economic recovery. So while the policies of the crony capitalist oligarchs threaten our existence, very long-term cycles that run counter to these efforts encourage us not to judge tomorrow by how things look today. What does that mean for individual MGTOW? Well, Jewish families who saw the writing on the wall and fled Germany to America before World War II prospered. What if they had remained in Germany and resisted the rise of the Nazis? Well, we already know the answer to that. Millions of them died. The war came and went. The families that fled survived and thrived. Germany rose back up out of the ashes, and Russia, a once hated enemy of economic freedom, is becoming more Christian, more Catholic, more traditional, more prosperous, and, thanks to the capable leadership of Vladimir Putin, more admirable than the United States. Not that I'm a big fan of Putin, but unfortunately for the United States, he's a much better leader for Russia than Barack Obama is for America. Speaking of which, Barack Obama's best efforts to turn the United States into a socialist cesspool is creating a backlash against big government. Now, while I don't believe Donald Trump is the answer, he is viewed as the anti-government candidate which has fueled his rising popularity. But as Rand Paul is the authentic anti-big government candidate, Paul is gaining ground. Meanwhile, it's beginning to look like Hillary Clinton might actually have to answer for her crimes, and with her out of the running, the next president will almost certainly be a Republican. The key to stop the spread of corporatist fascism in the United States, then, would be for Rand Paul to win the White House and a host of small government congressional candidates to take the House and Senate. That might not help Europe, but it could happen. And at this point, I wonder if Putin's friendship toward Germany could lay a foundation to counter the Islamic invasion into Europe. But say the banksters get their way, and they hang onto power long enough to send the West off the cliff. What purpose would be served by MGTOW sacrificing themselves upon the altar of the public good? During the darkest times, enclaves of enlightenment could endure, and I would rather be among them than to extinguish myself trying to preserve a doomed establishment. In the great TV series Babylon 5, J. Michael Straczynski had a semi-mystical order he called the Technomages, which were essentially MGTOW who preserved the elements of civilization. Remember, being MGTOW does not necessarily mean you're going to be celibate, nor does it even mean you can't have children. But we do act on the red pill knowledge we have as we refuse to participate in a culture that treats us like beef cattle. They cannot survive without us, yet they tell us we are evil and inferior. This is a classic Ayn Rand situation, and MGTOW is the obvious John Galt solution. As Ayn Rand wrote, "Need is not a license to steal," yet that is precisely what they assert and what they do, and MGTOW may ultimately save the culture by refusing to support this. By withdrawing our support, we deprive the parasitical state of what it needs to sustain itself. In the collapse or capitulation of the parasitical state lies the potential salvation of our civilization. That's all for now. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. For the Backlash at backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mechelen.